You're listening to the Chapter a Day Bible Study. I'm John Stange, and today we're in Exodus 2, the birth of Moses. Exodus 2 moves the story forward by showing us how God works through ordinary faithfulness, painful waiting, and imperfect people to accomplish His purposes. The chapter centers on the birth, preservation, and early formation of Moses, the man God will later use to confront Pharaoh and lead Israel out of slavery. What we see here isn't a polished hero, but a life shaped by God long before Moses understands what God is doing. The chapter opens with an act of courageous trust. A Levite woman gives birth to a son and hides him for 3 months. When she can no longer hide him, she places him in a basket and sets him among the reeds of the Nile. Exodus 2:3 tells us, "She took for him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank." This isn't an act of despair, it's an act of faith. She doesn't abandon her son, she entrusts him to God. Moses' sister watches from a distance, and God arranges what no human plan could guarantee. Pharaoh's daughter comes down to bathe. She sees the basket, and she takes pity on the child. Verse 6 says, "She opened it and saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, 'This is one of the Hebrews' children.'" The irony is quite interesting. Pharaoh ordered Hebrew baby boys to be thrown into the Nile, and now his own household becomes the means of saving one of them. Through a series of providential steps, Moses' own mother is hired to nurse him. God doesn't just preserve Moses' life, He restores him to his mother for a season. When Moses grows older, he's brought into Pharaoh's household and given a name that reflects his rescue. Exodus 2:10 says, "She named him Moses because she said, 'I drew him out of the water.'" God is already shaping Moses' identity around deliverance, long before Moses understands his calling. The next scene moves us forward many years. Moses has grown up and he becomes aware of the suffering of his people. Exodus 2:11 says, "One day, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens." That word carries weight. Moses doesn't just glance and move on. He sees, and what he sees stirs him to act. When he witnesses an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, Moses intervenes and kills the Egyptian. This moment reveals both Moses' compassion and his impatience. He wants justice, but he takes matters into his own hands. The next day, when he tries to break up a fight between two Hebrews, one of them asks, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us?" We see this in verse 14. Moses at this point realizes that his actions are known, and Pharaoh seeks to kill him. The would-be deliverer becomes a fugitive. Moses flees to Midian, where he helps the daughters of a priest named Reuel, and eventually marries Zipporah. He settles into a new life as a shepherd. Verse 22 records Moses' own assessment of his life. He said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land." This is a man caught between worlds, raised in Pharaoh's palace, born among slaves, and now living as an outsider in the desert. God is humbling Moses, teaching him patience, and preparing him for leadership in ways no palace ever could. The chapter ends by shifting our attention back to Israel. Exodus 2, verses 23 through 25 tells us that the king of Egypt dies. The people groan because of their slavery, and God responds. It says, "God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew." Those words matter. God hears, God remembers, God sees, God knows. Even when deliverance feels delayed, God is not absent. Exodus 2 points us toward Jesus in powerful ways. Like Moses, Jesus' life begins under the threat of a murderous ruler. Just as Pharaoh sought to destroy Hebrew boys, Herod would later seek to kill the children of Bethlehem. Moses was preserved through the waters of the Nile, and Jesus would later pass through the waters of baptism to identify with his people and begin his public mission. Moses attempted to bring deliverance through force, and he failed. Jesus brought deliverance through obedience, sacrifice, and love, and he succeeded where every human effort falls short. Moses fled after his act of violence, but Jesus moved towards suffering willingly. Moses spent years in obscurity before his calling became clear. Jesus spent years in humble preparation before stepping into public ministry. Most importantly, Exodus 2 reminds us that God's plan of salvation doesn't depend on human perfection. Moses is flawed, fearful, and uncertain, yet God's shaping him for a greater purpose. Jesus is the greater Moses, the true deliverer who doesn't merely confront earthly oppression, but frees us from sin and death. Where Moses led Israel out of physical slavery, Jesus leads us into lasting freedom. If you're in a season that feels hidden or delayed or confusing, Exodus 2 offers hope. God is still working. He sees more than you can see. He knows what he's doing. And just as he was preparing a deliverer in the background of Israel's suffering, he has already provided our ultimate deliverer in Jesus Christ. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Chapter a Day Bible Study. For more resources to help you in your walk with Christ and your understanding of the Bible, please visit my website at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And if you'd like to partner with me by becoming a supporter of this ministry, you'll see a few options to do so, again, at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com or in the description of this episode. As always, thank you for your prayers, thank you for your support, and thank you for your willingness to share this content with others. Have a great day, and I'll see you again right here tomorrow.